Hello grade 11 students, I would like to wish you all the best for your TOK exhibition during this pandemic. I'm sure it is not easy to face this new normal situation. However, I'm happy that you have already shown your perseverance, your resilience, and your good attitudes towards learning. This is part of your learning journey when you show your understanding and application of learning to be open-minded young adults who are able to see others' perspectives and how you express what you have learned. It is a practice of becoming global citizens who are caring and responsible to make the world to become a better and more peaceful place. Congratulations for all of your efforts and hard work to be able to present your TOK work.
Hello everyone, my name is Shalroy Hiskia from grade 11 Smith, and this is my TOK exhibition. The IA prompt that I will be discussing is what is the relationship between personal experience and knowledge. I chose this prompt because it challenges our understanding of knowledge that we have learned or will learn. The first object is this Logitech G25 steering wheel that I've been using since I was in primary school to play racing games such as Formula 1 or Dirt Rally on my laptop. The design of the object is simple, making it accessible and understandable to all age groups. The object has a feature called force feedback, which feeds the driver useful information of the car on the visual track. When I was younger, I had little to no experience on driving or racing, hence I was slow on both games. Since then, I've been playing more and more, gathering information on the car behavior and integrating it to my driving. With this information, I was going faster. This object shows that experience can give useful knowledge. On to my second object. The Trieste Bathyscaphe is a diving submarine which was built by the Italians in 1953, bought by the US in 1958, and took the first man to Mariana Trench in 1960. The vehicle was designed by Auguste Piccard, a scientist who was experimenting with balloons and water and pressure. At that time, the Mariana Trench is inaccessible due to the water pressure that would break any vehicle coming. Auguste's experience allows the designing and creation of the sub which could withstand the pressure of Mariana Trench. The sub gives humans access to the trench and gain exclusive knowledge only available on that location. This object shows that previous knowledge may be needed to unlock more knowledge. And the third object is the first ever guitar book that I've learned. It is called Guitar Scores Book 1, which I obtained in the 5th grade when I was attending guitar courses. At the time, I have little to no musical experience, only ones that I've learned from music lessons in school. The book teaches its reader how to play songs, but it is difficult to access for people that has no knowledge in music, which included me at that time. And my lack of experience means that I could not understand how to play guitar. This object shows that the lack of experience can lead to lack of access to knowledge. To conclude this exhibition, these objects provide a correlation between personal experience and knowledge. In some cases, preparations may be required to obtain some knowledge, while in others, experience with the object brings knowledge. Thank you.
primary prompt that I've chosen for this exhibition is, what are the challenges that are raised by the dissemination and/or communication of knowledge? In my perspective, I think that communication is very important and essential, especially in interacting with other people. I really find it interesting that in the slightest difference of culture, background, or perspective, it could actually affect on how people perceive and also understand another person's intention or message, which is one of the reasons why I think that this prompt is interesting enough to be discussed on. Our first object is FX Harsono's Writing in the Rain, created in 2011. It is about how he felt about the presidential cabinet decision in 1966, which was about how the Chinese Indonesians were forced to change their names into something of a more authentic Indonesian name in order to blend in with the population. He represents lost remembrance and endurance with the actions that he did in the video, which was on how he wrote his Chinese name using a brush and ink onto a piece of glass, and then there was a rain that washes away the characters. I chose this object because it was an object that I studied on in order to find inspiration for my artwork in visual arts. As a Chinese Indonesian and also knowing about this situation, I completely understand on how Harsono feels and what he is trying to convey. However, people who might lack in experience or knowledge about the situation might not really fully get on what Harsono is trying to say or how he felt, which is why we can say that lacking in experience and knowledge could be one of the challenges in the communication of knowledge. My second object is a BTS song called Life Goes On. It is about how we should have strength during challenging situations like the COVID-19 pandemic. I chose this object because as a listener, I relate a lot to the lyrics, and also I think that the song is very hopeful and very healing for people to listen to, especially during the pandemic. Due to technology advancements, translating platforms are helpful for people to understand what they are saying. However, these platforms itself could actually be a disadvantage since they actually have a hard time in translating literal and non-literal languages, which could make the message of the artist a bit more generalized. So due to this problem, people might have a challenge in understanding what the artists are trying to say. My last object is on my own Duolingo account that I used to learn Dutch with. So language is a very huge part of the world, especially when we're communicating with another person, because when we have the ability to speak in another language, people might actually have an easier time in communicating with us as well. So Duolingo is an online language learning platform that everyone could use. This app is helpful in learning grammars, vocabularies, tones, sentence formation, and also on how to speak a certain language. However, Duolingo have its own limitations as they do not provide any conversational materials, which could be hard for people to practice on the language itself with another person. Hence, we can say when we lack of human interaction, it could be one of the challenges in communicating with other people. In answering the IA prompt, we could say that when we lack experience, knowledge, and as well as human interaction, we could have difficulties in communicating with each other and also understanding each other, which is how TOK manifests around the world. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kanza from grade 11 Smith. In this exhibition, I'll be exploring the prompt, to what extent is certainty attainable, by exploring how certainty is perceived in different aspects of the world. I chose this prompt because I realized that it's fine to take any knowledge in with a grain of salt, because nothing can ever be certain all the time. My first object is the TOK exhibition assessment criteria, which will be used to assess this exhibition and many others. After the regular observation of this criteria, I realized how the division of the levels of achievement is quite restrictive. This led me to think about how a person would go about assessing an exhibition using this criteria. If we solely consult this criteria for assessment, the extent in which we can be certain of which mark boundaries an exhibition falls under is very little. For instance, a work may have precision and clarity in parts, but there may be strong justification in the work as well. There will be confusion whether or not to grade this work an excellent or a good. However, the IB uses a global impression marking approach for TOK. This means that the assessment of both the TOK exhibition and the TOK essay are also done through judging the student's overall performance. In other words, assessors don't keep a checklist of every strand that a work fulfills, but they attempt to judge which level the overall work of a student best fits in. This allows for more flexibility and ease in grading because assessors are not bound by the descriptors in their assessment. Hence, they can be more certain in their assessment. The next subject is the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or the MBTI for short. The MBTI attempts to classify human personalities into 16 types. This method has been gaining popularity in recent years due to online tests. The question is on how certain we can be of these results. The MBTI company themselves claim that they have an accuracy of 90% and that they are one of the most reliable and accurate personality assessments available, fortifying the idea of certainty in their tests. However, research suggests that more than 50% of test takers receive different results after taking the MBTI test 5 weeks later. Some critics in social science also state that the method is unscientific, so then who do we believe? But before that, we have to consider one thing, and that is in how this whole MBTI thing is done so that us humans can understand ourselves. So in a way, the MBTI is our way of forming certainties in a subject very uncertain like human personality. But in the end, it is up to the test takers to decide whether they are certain of this method. The extent in which we can be certain of the MBTI depends on ourselves. We can choose to take the company's word and be completely certain on the results we get, or choose to believe the research in social science and doubt the method. Ultimately, we can be in control of the extent of our certainties. My last subject is the Gregorian calendar. This calendar is a solar dating system used by nearly everyone today. Its use beginning in 1583. It is also said to be the most accurate calendar to date. Most people today would refer to this calendar without much questioning on its accuracy. What we fail to realize is that certainty in time is difficult to attain. This is because even calendars have errors. It has a margin of error of about 27 seconds per year, or 1 day for every 3,236 years. But despite the error, its use is still widespread. This is because the errors are compensated with what we know as leap year. Now technically, the extent of certainty we can have with time only lasts 3,236 years. If you think about it, such a small error will not matter for people today. Yet humans were unsatisfied with the tiny uncertainty in this calendar and created leap years. Its invention allows us to compensate for the uncertainty and even completely dismiss the errors to the point that we can call ourselves certain of time. From the three objects, we can see that certainty strongly depends on perception. Certainty is not something that is handed to us, the knowers, but rather something that we achieve by adjusting how we perceive knowledge. In the real world, this adjustment might need to be made to get the sense of certainty. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Taksugadi from 11 Mendel, and I'll be presenting my 3 TOK exhibition objects and along with my IA prompt, which is bias inevitable in the production of knowledge, by going into how bias manifests itself in many different ways. So I chose this prompt because I feel like bias is inevitable, especially in the context of humans and human emotions, but it is also actually quite prevalent in things that would be considered biasless, such as technology or things like AI, and that would come into my first object, which is a tweet by user Macfadol regarding TikTok's sort of algorithm. Now, this object is quite interesting to discuss since TikTok is a social media platform that is controlled by an algorithm that is based off of an artificial intelligence or AI. So it is quite interesting to see sort of bias that comes from the presence of technology and how it affects one's own outlook on popularity or maybe one's looks. So as seen from the tweet, the recommended users that show up from TikTok's algorithm are based on who the user follows first, and the algorithm interestingly looks at the first user's race, social economic status, and overall looks. So all of that would consider would be considered a social bias or technological bias, mind you, that controls how a user engages within the app itself. So for the second object, it is a movie by the title of Jurassic World, released in 2015 with the director of Colin Trevorrow, which deals with the main characters having to deal with a dinosaur outbreak. The reason why I chose this movie in particular and why I think it particularly answers the prompt pretty well is because with the context of the movie being produced in the range of 2004 and 2015, the producers had a lot of time to actually choose the information that would be given inside the movie itself. And a lot of the information that was being given and the one that was picked were very outdated and were based on very biased findings in nearly the early 19th century. So I would consider that a particular bias in one's own preferences when distributing some sort of knowledge. So to me, it is actually quite obvious that the producers were biased in picking out the information and choosing the information that they would be showing later on screen, and that would then correlate to how bias would represent itself and how it would manifest in the production of knowledge. So the third and final object would be a poem by the name of Mushrooms, written by Sylvia Plath during November 13, 1959, nearing Sylvia Plath's death. So Mushrooms was actually the subject of my own analysis during the first half of grade 11, so I would have some personal bias, so this would be interesting to discuss. So the poem itself is actually quite interesting when it comes to answering the prompt, since the key term, bias, due to the very vague nature of the poem itself, one's own personal bias can definitely affect how one might read the poem itself. And the premise of the poem itself is that there are a colony of mushrooms that are going to be rising up against an oppressive force. So with that context, one's personal bias may fill in the gaps of who the mushrooms would be. One might say it would be African Americans, or there would be women, or there'd be other people of color. So that would again show how one's personal bias would affect how they would perceive information and how they would perceive the things around themselves. So that would be all from me. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Aya and I'll be explaining about my TOK exhibition. The prompt that I chose is why do we seek knowledge? This prompt is important because as an over, we will be facing many problems that can only be solved by seeking other knowledge and new knowledge. Also, as human nature that keeps evolving, seeking knowledge is important to help the development of the past or present objects to be functional and suitable to be used in the present or the future. My first object is the disinfectant bottle. I carry this bottle whenever I go out because it is easy to be used with only one hand. The design of the bottle is suitable to store the disinfectant liquid mainly because of the sprayer. As you might notice that the characteristic of the disinfectant is as liquidy as water. Therefore, if we store the liquid inside a bottle that has a big mouth, it will spill to all over the place. Sprayer breaks the liquid into small particles, minimizing the liquid to spill and enabling the liquid to be distributed to all over our hand. Maybe some particles that went into the air looks like a waste. However, virus might be appear in the air near our hand. So the particles that are sprayed into the air might kill the viruses. The sprayer shows the need to seeking knowledge by creating perspective and judgment on what design and type of bottle that will be suitable to store the disinfectant liquid. My second object is the mechanical pencil that I've been using since grade 7. I bought this pencil mainly because it does not need sharpener in order to sharpen its tip. Instead, all you need to do is just to restore the lead. However, I found out that restoring the lead into the pencil is also time consuming, since most of the time the lead won't directly get into the lead sleeve due to the size of the hole that is as wide as the lead. while the size of the lead reservoir tube is way bigger than that. This forced me to seek knowledge, understanding, and familiarize myself with the object in order to fulfill the pencil's purpose of saving time by removing the need to sharpen the pencil. Increasing the size of the lead sleeve won't enable the lead to be held and stay in place when it comes out. So instead, we can restore the lead straight from the lead sleeve. My third object is a blackhead removal. This object is being neglected because, based on my experience, this object does not give a satisfying result since it is painful and it takes a lot of time to remove blackheads, which then this forced me to understand the characteristic and the information given by the object in order to create new design, new technology to remove blackhead faster and less painful. As a result, there is a complete modification to blackhead removal by inserting a vacuum cleaner-like technology. Of course, it will be a waste if I throw the blackhead removal just like that. This actually forced me to seek the understanding and be familiar with the object, and so that the object can be capable to be useful for something that is not intended to be. In my case, I saw this object as a tool that is suitable to carve soap because the sharp tips help to carve small soap and also small details. Also, the sharp tips replace the pencil as the outlining tool. And lastly, the round shape helps to smoothen the surface of the sculpture. As you can see, the three objects are able to answer why do we seek knowledge. And as you can tell, the established object still has an area that needs to be improved and also needs to be understood, which therefore seeking knowledge is needed and is important for us as a knower to solve the problem that we're facing when using the object and also to improve the functionality of the object.
Hi, my name is Ruben from 11 Mendel. Now I'm going to present my TOK exhibition. The TOK prompt I've selected for my exhibition is how important are material tools in the production or acquisition of knowledge. This exhibition explores this prompt by knowledge and technology, specifically the importance of technology in the production or acquisition of knowledge. Technology has been evolving since its creation, and it now plays a significant role in society by attempting to assist us in solving issues that humans are unable to solve. As a result, technology may be used to assist human in the development and or acquisition of knowledge. My first object will be my laptop, which is a MacBook Air released in 2015. In the start of my grade 7 year, in 2017, my father bought me a laptop due to the students requiring a laptop for learning purposes. The laptop is used for tasks and research, which is done to enhance the students' knowledge further in addition to just learning in the class with the teacher. It allows me to access the internet, thus acquiring knowledge through social networks dedicated in providing knowledge for users. In addition, the internet provides multiple cultural perspectives around the world. Hence, this object is able to portray how technology is used by individuals to help themselves in gaining both personal knowledge and personal experience, provided on the internet with the help of technology, and it has removed the boundaries of geographical locations, allowing for further sources of information from multiple perspectives. Therefore, in this particular case, technology is able to play a big role influencing positively, specifically in the acquisition of knowledge, by assisting and simplifying the process. My second object will be the KMS fusion. In 1974, KMS achieved the first ever controlled thermonuclear fusion research. Since the KMS fusion's technology is surely a material tool that is developed to produce knowledge about laser-induced fusion, the only method of ensuring its existence, possibility, and to do further research towards it is to perform experiments, which is only possible with the proper technology. Hence, in this case, without the material tool, such knowledge is unattainable. This object proved once more that technology is crucial in the production and acquisition of knowledge, since a controlled laser-induced nuclear fusion used to only be an idea, but now it's proven that it is in fact possible to perform such an experiment on Earth. My third object will be a prediction made by an AI developed by the Singapore University of Technology and Design, Data-Driven Innovation Lab. In 28 May 2020, SUTD Data-Driven Innovation Lab develops an AI that is able to create a prediction on the world's COVID-19 cases per day. It's no question that the material tool is required in the production of knowledge. Because after all, the AI is the one responsible for producing the prediction. The AI created by SUTD is newly developed, hence SUTD Lab has expected inaccuracies. Although the AI's inaccuracy have been expected, time has further exposed its inaccuracy and how large the inaccuracy really is. Regardless, it has created a false expectation and misleading us towards a false hope. This case indicates that technology, as a material tool in the process of production and or acquisition of knowledge, is able to mislead us by presenting false information. In conclusion, at least with these objects, we're able to conclude that with technology being a material tool, it is able to help us in the production and acquisition of knowledge. And regardless that it may mislead us, as Object 3 proposes, it has allowed us to gain knowledge that seems or even is impossible without technology, taken from an object as common as a laptop to the groundbreaking nuclear fusion technology, proves that theory of knowledge manifests in the real world around us. Thank you.
Good morning everyone, my name is Matthew from 11 Smith. Today I'm gonna explain about my theory expression. Firstly, I'm gonna talk about my prompt question, which is, are some types of knowledge more useful than others? So I choose this because it was quite interesting in some aspect of knowledge itself, as some knowledge can be either useful or useless depending on the knowledge base itself. So my first theory object will be the Mathematics AA Standard Double coursebook, as it used as a practical guide for the IB students on the insight of a Mathematics ASL experience. As an IB student, it is necessary that we use this as an everyday thing, as the book contains base knowledge on the understanding of mathematics, as it gives more on the content-based knowledge for students such as me on solving and giving practical tips and tricks, as it also helps on presenting, like the textbook itself is presenting on distilling and spreading knowledge to the whole world, works to the people like the IB students. In a way, since we are living in the modern era, the books can be stored in a PDF file or be transferred to the whole internet and purposely given to others, as it is a unique way on how in the modern era that information can be spread the whole world, and it can be useful for some people who are interested in math itself. Then moving on will be my second object will be the agricultural tool, as it was created back in the Egyptian era over 4,000 years ago, as this is a tool that to help shape soil, remove weed, clear soil, and harvest food crops. I choose this specific object because it's important how particle knowledge itself is dated back even in the ancient era. This type of particle knowledge helps us to reach humanity's in the first place, as it's the most valuable type of knowledge that ever preserved. Though this knowledge can be useful in some fields, in some knowledge of fields, as it can be mostly used by farmers to harvest their crops itself. With this particular knowledge, it helps the humanity to preserve and harvest their crops and food supplies. Even this can be important, as even in dated back in ancient history, even in modern era, people are still using this as a tool for every day for farmers to help their crops. For my final object will be the paintbrush. So basically, the paintbrush helps on painters to apply paint or ink to their based on their artistic visions on the canvas itself. The reason I choose this is because it's quite unique in some way. The way they brush reflects and imagine what their art is gonna be, it's gonna be amazing. In a way, the brush is quite useful in some trying to affect their inner thoughts, into their painting based on their artistic visions. Since furthermore that artists requires plus to help them to paint and to get a job, even in digital era, the plus helps artists such as the magic pen, have more experience in painting, which they can change into a digital type of painting. So even then, in the era back then, it still can be used, but in digitally way of how we doing it. As it also helps the person like the knowledge of usefulness even in dated back. It can be also evolve more. Inclusion, my all my three objects are related to the prompt question, or as knowledge base can be either useful or useless depending on the knowledge field itself. As the prompt question helps on the fact and the nature of knowledge, as some were used in the past and still can be used in the future, which knowledge can also helps on representing the time itself.
Hello guys, today I'm going to be explaining about my mini exhibition under the IA prompt, does some knowledge belong only to particular communities of knowers? First of all, do UFOs exist? What lies in the existence of religion? And did Hitler really kill himself? Information is at its highest rate of accessibility these days as the internet became more in reach to more people. Therefore, information is able to revolve around the internet from more sources to more readers. But some things still fail to be logically or rationally answered till this day. The emergence of conspiracy theories aid in raising curiosity among this topic of mystery. So does some knowledge belong only to particular communities of knowers? I have chosen 3 exhibits: Hitler's death, ancient mysterious paintings, and religion. The reason I chose these 3 topics is to address the holes in logic and rationality these topics have to offer. First, Exhibit 1, Hitler. Stalin's forces concluded back in April 30th, 1945 that Hitler had killed himself along with his new wedded wife. But conspiracies arose that he either fled to Argentina, killed with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the temple, or either still roaming around the world till this day. The fact is that Stalin himself executed a plan to sow misunderstandings and misconceptions of Hitler's death. Stalin's army defeated Germany's invasion, hence gaining jurisdiction on how information could be sent or shown to the public. This shows that some knowledge may have been restricted due to the purpose of propaganda that later can spark the resurgence of Nazis during the Allied occupation of Germany by the USSR. The inconsistent proof that witnesses gave from the event. Some witnesses say that his head was shot open. Some say there was no blood but just foam coming out of his mouth. And some say they didn't even see Hitler at all. Stalin's army was keeping the truth about this incident to the public knowledge. This shows that knowing Hitler's death was deemed classified and required for it to be buried and hidden from the public eyes. Although knowledge is widespread and really accessible these days, the web is in constant monitoring, making the sources and articles provide existential facts. In the case of the Nazis, the true fact of his death was only known to the soldiers, Stalin, and Stalin's subordinates, and making it virtually impossible to create factual conclusions. Exhibit 2, Ancient Paintings. Ancient paintings and murals have been around the world for centuries. Paintings that either reflect upon a society, paintings that serve an aesthetic purpose, an abstract purpose, and paintings that illustrate an event or describe an event. In this image, it is shown an alien petroglyph located in Utah that shows a humanoid figure that possesses unique features like horns, equipped with a staff, and such. But is this a depiction of aliens? Journalists and conspiracy theorists have taken a look at these paintings and gave various definitions, starting with aliens, men in costumes, ghosts, tribes. Until this day, these painting purpose is still hidden in the brains of tribes in Utah. This depiction shows how secrets aren't kept to not spread chaos, but to the simple fact that these paintings weren't questioned back then, destroying our chances to ever find out the definitions of these paintings. Exhibit 3, Religion. Where the other two exhibits show that knowledge indeed can belong to specific communities, it doesn't necessarily be entirely that. Religion is one of the examples that reflects on how different knowledge from different religions may contribute to one's daily routine, how it could be widespread and does not provide any restriction upon the knowledge given. Take example, Islam. The events were told in the Quran that religions were descendants of a Bible, a source of knowledge free to use and interpreted by fellow human beings. It provided beliefs about the afterlife, the deeds and the sins, the angels, anything that could give a person ease from the fear of death. It too provided the necessary steps to gain the trust of Allah in Islam or Jesus in Christianity and be accepted by His side in the afterlife. Although it is still a mystery how the Quran was interpreted by a prophet that couldn't read or write, in Surah Al-Ankabut verse 46, it is said, "And you did not read before it any book, nor had you written any book with your own hands. Otherwise the falsifiers would have had cause for doubt." And or how Jesus was resurrected. On 1 Peter 1:3, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In His great mercy He has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead." It showed a sense of divinity that were never restricted by the lines of a page, by the restriction of today's norms, or by ideological standards. So, in conclusion, it is without a doubt that some knowledge belongs only to some communities of knowers, shown by even mysteries around the world, not only these three exhibits. What matters most is how the knowledge restrictions is used to achieve unintended purpose, whether it be good or bad.
Hello everyone, my name is Samuel from grade 11 Smith, and today I'll be presenting my TOK exhibition with the prompt, "What role does imagination play in the production of knowledge around the world?" So I found this prompt interesting because I realized that we often use our imagination both consciously and unconsciously in our daily lives. And I believe that imagination can be used in production of knowledge in all aspects or areas. The first subject that I'm going to use to answer my prompt is my answer sheet for my math summatives on imaginary and complex numbers, which was done on November 25th, 2020. The summative assessment requires our understanding on basic mathematical concepts, as well as our understanding on imaginary and complex numbers. To understand imaginary numbers, we require imagination, or imagination is required. As stated within its name, imaginary numbers are imaginary or unreal. This object shows how imagination plays a role in solving problems which involve unreal or imaginary elements, in this case, imaginary numbers. Imagination is used to visualize, in a sense, those imaginary elements so that we can grasp and understand the concept. So the object answers the prompt through a mathematical approach. Here, knowledge is in the form of this solution. The second object that I'm going to use to answer the prompt is my physical copy of IU's fourth studio album titled Palette. This album was released on April 21st, 2017. I often use this album to listen to music. As a music album and a work of an artist, this object can be considered as art, both performing and visual arts. The performing aspect coming from the music itself, and the visual arts aspect coming from the design of the album. The process of creating this object first starts with coming up the idea, and then actualizing those ideas, and finally finalizing those ideas into this album. Imagination here is used within the process of artistic creation. Imagination in arts and other areas plays an important role in harmonizing the artist's or knower's intentions or ideas and the aesthetic capabilities of said artists, and then actualizing those into artistic creation. Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher, defined this as productive imagination. This object is included to answer the prompt from the approach of the arts. Here, the knowledge is in the form of this album. The third object that I'm going to use to answer my prompt is my Rubik's Cube. I've owned this object since December 2019, and I've been using it ever since for entertainment and to challenge myself. There are an uncountable amount of ways to scramble a cube and to solve a cube. Well, an important skill for solving a cube is prediction. Whenever I'm attempting to solve a cube, I predict how each and every move will affect the final outcome of the cube. I achieve this prediction through the use of imagination. In prediction, imagination is used to imagine the different outcomes that could happen after every move or permutation. The knower then uses the knowledge of those outcomes and figure out which set of actions will lead to the preferred outcome. This object is included to show how imagination is used in the production of knowledge in the form of predictions. So in conclusion, the exhibition shows that imagination plays an important role in producing knowledge all around the world. However, the role of imagination may vary depending on what the knower needs at the moment. Thank you, and that will be all.
Hello, I'm Lilaf, and for my TOK exhibition, I will be answering the prompt, what are the implications of having or not having knowledge? So often we find ourselves knowing things that we believe to be true, and with this prompt, I want to find what the initial discovery of knowledge can lead to for those involved. So my first object is the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut, which is located in Deir el-Bahri in Luxor, Egypt. And it might be surprising for many to know that the temple was actually commissioned by a female pharaoh that did not go by the name of Cleopatra. She was named Hatshepsut, and during her reign, Egypt was peaceful and experienced immense growth. And even though queen as influential as Hatshepsut also ruled Egypt once, most people think that Cleopatra was the only queen to ever rule Egypt. And an author named Simon Worrell mentions that this might also be a sign that we tend to popularize the failure of women rather than their success, because Cleopatra was the last pharaoh to ever rule Egypt before its downfall. So, and she was also known to have a number of lovers throughout her lifetime. But I would argue that this is simply the implication of not knowing who Hatshepsut was, or even how successful Cleopatra was as a pharaoh. And as a result of not knowing, we might be ignorant of the richness that a certain group can bring and might even reveal an even bigger systemic problem. So my second object is the Geiger-Marson experiment apparatus, or better known as the Rutherford foil experiment. And yeah, this experiment led to the discovery of the nucleus. And utilizing the knowledge of the nucleus, in 1938, Lise Meitner and Otto Frisch helped Otto Hahn in formulating the fission process. It is a process by which the nucleus is split, and they found that this process produces an immense amount of energy. And nowadays, it is used to produce clean and cheap energy, but it also has a dark part in its history where it was used to produce atomic bombs during World War II, and as a result, it killed 200,000 people during the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. And with this object, I would like to demonstrate how knowledge is a double-edged sword, and with it comes the responsibility of using it ethically and for us to be aware of what we are using it for. So my third object is Bungo Stray Dogs, written by Kafka Asagiri, and it was published in 2012. So I would like to highlight how it has a very strong historical context, as the characters are based on Japanese and Western writers mostly from the 1900s. And the meaning of the book itself is to show how literature can fill in the gaps in everyone's lives. And ironically, it is also a form of attribute towards the authors, despite it being a very comedical and satirical in a way. And with this book, I found that some knowledge can help us delve deeper into things that are seemingly simple and trivial, and it can bring more insight to the little things in life. So, yeah, in conclusion, not having knowledge can lead to ignorance and the diminishing of the value of an object. And having knowledge also implies the need to be aware of using it ethically and humanely. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nandra and I'm from grade 11 Mendel. So for today's talk exhibition, I will be selecting the prompt, what constraints are there on the pursuit of knowledge? And this exhibition, I will be exploring on both the presence and the absence of technology on the pursuit of knowledge, and especially now that we're living in a digital era where technology is one of the most important aspects of our lives. And other than that, I will also be exploring on how languages interfere with the pursuit of knowledge, because now we live in a world where different languages are spoken and each country has its own language and speakers, and with that, communication might get hindered because various languages are coming into play. The first object, we have traditional learning methods or books. So the image attached shows that African students still learn by reading books. Although technology is involved, it is very minor and minimal. And the constraint to the pursuit of knowledge is that students need to have a deeper understanding of their learning material. And to do that, they need to have access to alternative resources. And with the absence of technology, African students, they might need to put more effort and they need to sacrifice more of their time because they need to walk to the local library and they need to search for books that truly fit their learning material. And it might be time consuming and it might be hard for them to do so. Compared to students that have access to technology, they can easily open up their gadgets and access the internet, and they can find out what they're looking for, and they can find out the information that is needed for the learning material quickly and faster. And moreover, the information provided on the internet has more real-life application to it because it is more updated compared to the information that is provided on books. Object, we have fake tweets being uploaded on social media. So social media has been an integral part of our lives. It is a platform for us to share information and to exchange information and of course to know more about the world. However, the catch is that we have the freedom to share what we want, so that the information that we might get can be misleading and it cannot be backed up with facts and evidence. So the perfect example of this is the image attached above. It is Joanne Wright's false tweets regarding COVID-19. So she claims that the COVID-19 is man-made, and she also claims that Bill Gates, along with other individuals such as Hillary Clinton and the Pope, were behind the development of the virus. Although it is a misleading information since she didn't put any type of evidence such as photos and videos to support her claim. Moreover, there is no expert opinion whatsoever that is in agreement with her statements, therefore making it just an unreliable information for us. This correlates to the problem because people that are genuinely trying to know more about the virus, like they trying to know more about the origin of the virus, they will be misled and they will be fed lies. So instead of uploading fake tweets, it is better to pursue and acquire justified knowledge about the COVID-19 virus. So for example, the origin of the virus that is backed up with photos. Final object, we have people having difficulties understanding one another over the phone. So the image attached above shows that two people having business calls, but they can't seem to understand one another because of the language barrier that is in the way. So this is caused by the different backgrounds that they're from and different cultures that differentiate their language in a major way. So when a specific order needs to be carried out, the orders might get misinterpreted over the phone and the outcome wouldn't be as planned. However, when we try to pursue knowledge, there are always going to be constraints, and we as knowers, we need to pay attention to these constraints. So for example, it is proven that technology can give us a wider range of information because there's social media and the internet. However, it might be a constraint since we may be fed with misleading information, just like what we discussed on object 2, which is not being backed up with supporting evidence, claims, and many more. So we need to pay attention to these constraints of knowledge, and we always need to be on the lookout. Thank you for the chance.
Hello everyone, my name is Alicia and I am from Grade 11 Smith. Today I will be presenting my TOK exhibition. So the IA prompt that I have chosen is bias inevitable in the production of knowledge? In general, bias means good or unfair, but it can be interpreted in many different ways depending on the context. My first object is a YouTube video of a TED Talk by Ji-hyun Kim. It is titled, How Objective is Your History Textbook? The video was uploaded on February 19, 2019. Ji-hyun Kim is a student from South Korea and she gave out this talk when she was in 10th grade. She talked about how comfort women were diminished from history textbooks. During World War II, over 200,000 Korean women were forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military. Many consider this as a war crime. The object shows that bias occurs in history textbooks because of the sources used and also the people behind the making of these textbooks. In this context, bias means an unbalanced view of what happened in the past. Here, bias is purposefully used as a tool for government propaganda. And as Ji-hyun Kim discussed, in 2015, the president of South Korea decided to make all history textbooks to be directly government published. But I believe that this bias should never be present in history textbooks, since it is considered as a reliable source of information for students. This object is included because it shows that bias can be minimized, but it is still inevitable because we cannot eliminate bias caused by the source of information. But we can eliminate the bias caused by the government. Moving on to my second object, which is my set square. I have been using the set square for 2 years. I use the set square as a ruler. The main purpose of the set square is to measure the length of certain things that I usually do as a scientific observation. The unit that is present in the set square is centimeter. The hatch marks start with 1 centimeter instead of 0 centimeters. This set square can cause measurement errors in scientific investigations. There are 2 types of measurement errors. The first one is random error and the second one is systematic errors. Random error can happen because of unpredictable variables such as the environmental conditions, and it will affect the precision of the measurement. Systematic errors are caused by faults in the measuring instrument and it will impact the accuracy of the measurements. When systematic errors are present, the result will always be off, but they are in a close range unless the measurement tool are calibrated. But the set square that I have cannot be calibrated because the hatch marks cannot be replaced. Therefore, every calculation that I do with this set square will always be off by 1 centimeter. This object is included in this exhibition because it shows that bias is inevitable in measurements as a result of the measuring tools that are flawed and cannot be calibrated. The last object that I have is a movie titled Mean Girls, and it is a teen movie directed by Mark Waters that came out in 2004. In that drawing and from Genesis' narration, there are certain stereotypes used, such as Asian nerds and unfriendly black hotties. As humans, we often categorize others into certain groups based on their features. Stereotyping a certain group is also known as implicit bias. Stereotypes are fine as long as they are not used to humiliate a certain social group. However, there are some words that are associated with certain racial groups which make the stereotypes harmful, like the word nerds and unfriendly. A nerd is usually the type of person who is unattractive and lacks social skills, which is why when it is associated with the Asian, it became harmful. In the early 2000s, negative stereotypes were commonly used in the media as a result of our ignorance. We failed to identify the implicit bias we carry, thus, negative stereotyping is normalized in the society. The last object illustrates that bias is inevitable because it is deeply rooted. This type of bias is hard to identify because it is a part of us since a very young age. Because it is an unconscious act, it does not mean that we are intentionally discriminating a certain group of people. But it is a fine line between unintentional stereotypes and derogatory stereotypes. From all 3 objects, we can conclude that bias is present in every aspect of knowledge development. As illustrated by the first object, our learning resources such as history textbooks have bias in them as a result of propaganda. Then, the second object shows how bias is inevitable in measurements due to the measuring instruments. Lastly, in the third object, we can see that bias is inevitable because we have it unconsciously. That is all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole and I am from grade 11 Mendel. In this video, I'm going to explain about my TOK exhibition with the IA prompt of are some type of knowledge more useful than others. Knowledge has the definition of facts, information, and skills gained through experience or education. The reason why I choose this IA prompt is that there are different types of knowledge in which I believe each of them has their own function. The first object is Duolingo. It's a language learning application that I use to study Mandarin. It provides exercise to learn vocabulary, grammar, and sentence structure. Language is necessary for human connection. It allows us to share ideas, thoughts, and feelings. Language has 7 functions, which are instrumental, regulatory, interactional, personal, heuristic, imaginative, and representational. Interactional function means the language fit to form a relationship with others, while the personal function is the function of language used to express the feelings and opinions. The heuristic function allows to gain knowledge. For example, can you explain this information to me? Imaginative function means the language is capable of asking to imagine something. And the last one, representational function, means that it is free to convey facts. The function of language resulting in effective communication, and Mandarin is one of the mediators to achieve it. By using Duolingo, I can learn Mandarin with the benefit of gaining more knowledge, since I can interact, communicate, and socialize with people that can speak Mandarin. I can also receive more information by reading Mandarin books or news. The second object is Algebra Touch application. It's an application that I use to practice the concept of algebra. It teaches the exponents and the distribution process. The terms help us to understand the concept of algebra itself. Mathematics counts as a language since it has vocabulary, grammar, and syntax. The mathematical equation can be expressed in a sentence with nouns and verbs, just like any other spoken languages. Nouns in mathematics are, for example, Arabic numerals, variables, fractions, and expressions, while verbs in mathematics are symbols like equalities or inequalities, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and also other operations such as sin, cos, and tan. The same thing as the vocabulary, grammar and syntax are also internationally known. The formula always read from left to right, while brackets always indicate the order of the symbols. A language is a learning and teaching tool, so by understanding the language of mathematics, it is easier for us to understand the theory of mathematics. Word problems in mathematics help students to learn how to extract nouns, verbs into a mathematical equation. The next object is Music Theory Helper application. This application helps me to learn music theory easier. It teaches us about chords, intervals, scales, octaves, and symbols. Music is a universal language. It has the same terms and concepts all over the world. An example is the word tempo is more familiar than time in music. Some symbols have meanings like P or piano, which means musicians should play it quietly. Some other music terminologies come from other languages such as encore, which comes from French with the meaning of again, which is usually an extra piece that plays at the end of the performance. We cannot say that the language of music is the least important one because music without the language itself means nothing. When we are unable to understand the language of music, it will be hard for us to understand the concept of music and to communicate among the musicians. In conclusion, from the 3 objects, we can see that there are some types of knowledge with their functions in their field. Therefore, in the real world, all knowledge is equally important and cannot be compared. Thank you.
Good day to the teachers, parents, and other audiences of this TOK exhibition video. My name is Venetia from 11 Mendel, and I have chosen the prompt on how important are material tools in the production or acquisition of knowledge. Basically, this prompt actually talks about how a certain tool may aid or guide learners in the production or acquisition of new or more knowledge that they already have. So my first object is this practical photography book written by Ben Hawkins. The book actually has an intention to educate learners on how to use DSLR cameras, from the basic to a more advanced ways of using it. The object does not only provide the basic knowledge, but also the standard knowledge on, like, for example, color space, or formatting. This may be useful for other beginner learners as well who have not yet completely acquired the basic knowledge on photography. After acquiring the basics, the object guides learners to a more advanced ways of using these DSLR cameras. And then the object also guides the learners on how to take pictures in different situations. For example, when the photographer is moving, or when the object is moving from one place to another. The object not only provides text that guides learners on how to use certain features, but they also provide the pictures on how the DSLR is set up, and then the examples of pictures when you take a picture using that certain feature. The object also teaches the basic editing skills so that learners can actually edit the pictures up until their expectations. So I think that this tool is significant to an extent where the learners actually acquire knowledge and produce knowledge only in theory of the knowledge. But the object actually does not support the acquisition and the production of knowledge when the photographer actually takes the pictures or the images in the field themselves without constantly trying to practice to do so. So my second object is this YouTube called Sign with Heart. Sign with Heart is owned by Ashley Clark, who is a hearing impaired person. It is possible to learn sign language only by looking at illustrations of pictures. However, I think that in order to maximize the acquisition and the production of the knowledge itself, demonstration and watching people demonstrate it might actually aid and support the process of acquiring or producing the knowledge. Videos of demonstrations like this may also be useful, especially for long sentences or similar signs, which can indicate maybe a different meaning. Subtitles are also provided by the knower in order to guide the learners from misunderstandings. In conclusion, we can see how different types of tools actually aid the acquisition or the production of knowledge, especially if there are different types of learners or there are learners who need special help or aid in the acquisition or production of knowledge. For my third object, I have this basic textbook for German called Netzwerk. So Netzwerk actually guides learners on the basics of the German language. Unlike English, German is actually more complicated for the basics of the language itself, as they still use infinitives and particles. The book is of course structured from a more basic part of the language, like good morning, and to a more structured way, like the uses of masculine and feminine of the language. However, in order for learners to be able to fully acquire or produce knowledge from this object, a guide or a knower is required in order to guide the learner in acquiring and producing of the knowledge itself, as the object is purely limited to German language only. Therefore, we can see the importance of using tools to gain knowledge or to acquire knowledge. In this case, German as a language is already very complex, and therefore the object can step-by-step guide learners in producing or acquiring knowledge in this language. Therefore, we can say that material tools are important only to a certain extent, as each tools may have their own limitations. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Chika from 11 Smith, and now I'm going to talk about my TOK exhibition where I have picked out the prompt, how can we know that current knowledge is an improvement upon past knowledge? Well, knowledge isn't something specific. Knowledge is very broad, and it can be portrayed in different ways through different scenarios. And the answer to our how in this question is by actually realizing how it affects and changes our personal life, which is going to be explained through my three objects. So this is my first object that I have chosen, which is my current phone that I have been using for 2 years in the type of iPhone X, and that I want to compare it to my first ever phone that I used back in 2015, which is an SEA. And now I can say that the presence of smartphones are mandatory for every modern human being, not to just communicate, but also do everyday life activities, for example, online schools or work from home, which is very efficient, which is also why I choose this as an answer to my IA prompt, because also of my personal experience in using both phones. And based on my experience, I realized that my first and current phone are different in many aspects, which relates to modern technology, including its function, capacity, and it is overall significantly different. And for me myself, this object has affected and changed me socially and emotionally. For social, now I can interact with people that I don't know, and I can come out of my comfort zone since I'm quite an introvert. And for emotional, I can connect to my family, which are very far away from me, which is why I use this object as an answer to my prompt, since it is an improvement. So the second object that I have chosen is an article regarding polio vaccines in Indonesia. And as we all know, polio strikes young children and young infants, which affects the spinal cords, causing muscle weakness and paralysis due to poor hygiene. And as we also know, viruses mutated over time and could even sometimes be immune to vaccines. And the reason why I choose these polio vaccines as my answer to my exhibition, it is because after years of uncertainty, polio vaccines now acts as a proof that after more thorough research and scientific development, vaccines can be used to help society face health problems, therefore making sure that it impacts the society as a whole in a positive way all over the globe. And not only that, polio has undergone clinical trials and testing which evidently show that vaccines are an improvement upon past knowledge, because without prior knowledge, no new findings are found in the health world industry to try and adapt to the new arising viruses and bacteria. So the third object that I have chosen is my induction stove, or my electric stove that my mom bought not too long ago for cooking. So actually, this induction stove could last up to 8 years and could produce 250 degrees Celsius at one go, which is very effective in terms of safeness, which can reduce the chances of fire. And as we all know, the method of cooking back then was using wood and friction, which is usually used in rural areas where they do this and then fire would appear. However, as time goes by, electric stoves are more likely to be used in a modern household since it is easier to clean and it is time efficient. And usually my mom used this in the morning because it is 20 minutes faster than using a normal stove. However, for me, it is difficult for me to use it since there are multiple symbols which I have to click on and I still don't understand, which indicates that it is a shared knowledge since it is very different when me and my mom use it. And I use this object as a proof to answer my prompt because the induction stoves are able to invent a more efficient way of cooking by producing heat without fire, and that it is the advancement of cooking technologies over the past centuries, starting from wood and fire to flameless stoves, which produces instant heat. So in conclusion, the three objects that I choose explains how knowledge is improved in different ways in different activities such as cooking, health, and studying for a much larger group of people, and changing us to be a more up-to-date and modern human being. Thank you!